the night Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the field for his NFL preseason debut with the Cleveland Browns. The storyline seemed predictable. A fifth-round rookie quarterback, fresh from college, thrust into action with barely a week of full practices. The bar was low, manage the game, avoid catastrophic errors, hit a few safe passes, and exit without looking like the moment was too big. But Sanders had other plans. What unfolded wasn't just a game, it was a statement. If you're here for the unfiltered truth, the kind of story that goes beyond SportsCenter clips, hit subscribe. And if you're invested in this Browns quarterback drama, you'll want to stick around for what's coming. It's going to be a wild ride. With just one practice alongside the starters, Sanders walked into the huddle like he'd been running NFL offenses his whole life. Myles Garrett, the Browns' defensive cornerstone, stood on the sideline, eyes locked on the rookie. He'd seen quarterbacks crumble under less pressure. "Some guys, you can tell the stage is too big," Garrett said after the game. This wasn't that. Sanders didn't just survive his first NFL test against the Panthers. He dismantled expectations with a performance that had Cleveland buzzing. From the opening snap, Sanders set a tone. The Panthers came out swinging, sending early blitzes to rattle the rookie. On his first 3rd and long, pinned near his own end zone, Sanders didn't flinch. He stepped up in the pocket, eyes calm, and rifled a pass to David Bell for a first down. It wasn't just the completion, it was the decisiveness. Most rookies would have panicked or checked down too soon. Sanders trusted his read, and it showed. That play sparked a drive that felt like a veteran was under center. Short passes to tight ends, quick outs to receivers, and a steady rhythm that moved the chains methodically. Then came the moment that made the dog pound roar. On a 2nd and 6, Sanders sold a play-action fake so convincing the Panthers linebackers froze. He dropped back, scanned the field, and launched a 42-yard missile to Amari Cooper, who caught it in perfect stride. The pass was pinpoint, the kind of throw that doesn't just gain yards, it shifts perceptions. Cooper didn't have to adjust, he just ran through the catch. A few plays later, Sanders found Cooper again in the end zone for a short touchdown. In his first NFL drive, the rookie had led a scoring march that looked effortless. The crowd was already chanting his name. The first half was a masterclass. The Panthers tried everything, disguised coverages, late safety rotations, exotic blitz packages, but Sanders stayed unfazed. He wasn't just locking onto his first read, he was cycling through progressions, checking down when needed, and keeping the offense on schedule. On a second quarter drive, pinned deep again, Sanders showed his patience. Instead of forcing a hero play, he worked the short game, hitting David Njoku for back-to-back first downs, using running backs as outlets, and carving up the defense. Inside the red zone, he spotted man coverage on Cedric Tillman, called an audible at the line, and zipped a dart for his second touchdown of the night. By halftime, Sanders was 14 for 20, with over 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a clean sheet. No turnovers, no mistakes. But the stats only told half the story. What set Sanders apart was what happened off the field. On the sideline, he wasn't parked next to a coach waiting for a playbook to be spoon-fed. He was huddled with his offensive linemen, talking through blitz pickups. He grabbed receivers to discuss route depths. He pored over tablet footage, pointing out how the Panthers' safeties tipped their coverage pre-snap. He carried himself like he'd been in the league 5 years. Garrett said later, "That's not normal for a rookie." In the third quarter, head coach Kevin Stefanski gave Sanders the keys to push the tempo. On a 2nd and 7, with a Panthers edge rusher bearing down, Sanders rolled right, kept his balance, and threw a 35-yard strike across his body to Elijah Moore. It was a high-risk throw, the kind that makes coaches wince unless you've got the arm and precision to make it routine. Sanders did. Even when drives hit turbulence, a dropped pass here, a near sack there, he never let the game slip away. On a critical 3rd and 8, he sidestepped a blitz, kept his eyes downfield, and delivered a bullet to Njoku for another first down. It wasn't the flashiest play, but it was the kind of moment that keeps an offense alive. By the time Sanders' night ended in the 4th quarter, the Browns were up 30-10. His final line, 14 of 23 for 122 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. The numbers were solid, but the impact was seismic. He'd run the huddle with authority, read defenses like a veteran, and given the Browns' offense a pulse. As he jogged off the field to a standing ovation, teammates slapped his helmet, coaches shook his hand, and even Panthers players dapped him up. In the post-game press conference, Sanders stayed humble. Asked to grade himself, he gave a C++. "Missed a few throws I should have hit," he said. "Some reads I could have made quicker. I've got to be better." It was the kind of response that showed he wasn't chasing clout, he was chasing perfection. The next morning, the narrative shifted. Analysts who'd written Sanders off as a developmental pick were scrambling to rewrite their takes. NFL Network ran a segment breaking down his footwork, his pocket presence, and how he manipulated safeties with his eyes. ESPN had talking heads debating whether he should get first-team reps immediately. In the Browns locker room, the reaction was even stronger. Veterans who'd been skeptical in camp were now believers. "He's a natural," Garrett said. "He puts the ball where it needs to be," Cooper added. Stefanski, usually reserved, summed it up. "He's not afraid of the moment. That's rare." For Cleveland, a city that cycled through quarterbacks like a bad habit, this felt like a spark. The Monday after the game, the Browns facility was electric. Local sports radio couldn't stop replaying that Cooper deep ball. Kids showed up to school in Sanders jerseys. Fans who'd endured years of quarterback purgatory were starting to let themselves hope. Sanders, meanwhile, was already in the film room, dissecting every snap, circling mistakes, and jotting down fixes. "One game doesn't mean anything if you don't stack it," he told reporters. If his debut was any indication, Sanders wasn't just stacking games, he was building a foundation for something bigger. The week that followed was different. Normally, a preseason win fades quickly. Coaches dive into film, players nurse bruises, and fans look ahead to the next game. But this time, the buzz lingered. The locker room hummed with a quiet confidence. The practice facility felt alive, like everyone from the equipment staff to the front office knew something special had happened. Sanders' performance wasn't just a fluke, it was a signal. For years, Cleveland had watched quarterbacks flash in camp only to collapse under NFL pressure. Some buckled physically, others mentally. Sanders, though, had walked into his first game and owned it. It wasn't just the stats, 14 of 23, 2 touchdowns, it was the intangibles. The way he carried himself in the huddle like it was just another Tuesday. The way his eyes stayed calm after a bad play. The way he took charge of adjustments instead of waiting for coaches to spoon-feed him. Monday's film session was a revelation. Stefanski didn't just praise the big plays, he broke down the details. He paused on a third down conversion where Sanders froze a safety with his eyes just long enough to open a window for Bell. He highlighted a protection adjustment that gave Sanders an extra beat in the pocket. He slowed down that 42-yard bomb to Cooper, showing how Sanders' shoulder fake pulled the cornerback's hips out of position. The room was locked in. Receivers started jotting notes on how to tweak their routes based on Sanders' reads. The offensive line nodded when Stefanski pointed out how his quick release neutralized the Panthers' pass rush. Even the defense was paying attention because if the offense could control games like this, it meant less time for them on the field. By Tuesday, Sanders was back in the facility early, working with quarterbacks coach Drew Petzing. They dissected every throw, not to pat themselves on the back, but to find flaws. Sanders didn't need prompting. He called out a late checkdown in the second quarter, a missed slant opportunity, a high throw that forced a receiver to adjust. That self-awareness had coaches leaning forward. It's one thing to make rookie mistakes, it's another to spot them before anyone else does. That's the difference between good and great. Practice that week was sharper than usual. Sanders' focus was contagious. Receivers stayed late to run extra routes, syncing up on timing. Running backs spent hours in the film room, refining pass protection calls. The offensive line worked on cadence variations to give their quarterback an edge against aggressive fronts. It wasn't all smooth during a 2-minute drill on Wednesday. Sanders misread a blitz and took a sack. The defense erupted, chirping at the rookie. Instead of clapping back, Sanders jogged to the huddle, called the next play, and hit a 25-yard seam route to Tillman on the next snap. Message received. "That's when I knew he was different," Garrett said later. "He doesn't get rattled, he just responds." The media frenzy grew by the day. Local stations looped Sanders' highlights, while national shows debated whether he should start in the regular season. His C++ self-grade became a talking point. Some called it humble. Others saw it as a sign of maturity. Sanders didn't care about the chatter. "I've got work to do," he told every reporter, every time. By Thursday, the next opponent loomed. A team with a defensive coordinator known for eating rookie quarterbacks alive. In film study, Sanders sat with veteran QB Dylan Gabriel and the coaching staff, breaking down tendencies. The two quarterbacks traded insights, discussing how to counter late safety rotations and disguised coverages. There was no ego, no rivalry, just two pros trying to crack the code. Friday's walkthrough was a thing of beauty. Sanders was crisp, vocal, and decisive, calling out pre-snap adjustments like a seasoned play caller. On one play, he spotted a simulated blitz and checked to a quick slant that went for a big gain. Coaches exchanged looks. This wasn't just a rookie who knew the playbook. This was a quarterback who understood the game. When the second preseason game arrived, the energy was palpable. Fans packed the stands, waving signs that read QB1 and Sanders SZN. Kids lined the tunnel in number 2 jerseys. It wasn't just another preseason game. It felt like Cleveland had found its guy. The opposing defense tested Sanders early, stacking the box and sending delayed rushes. The first quarter was a grind, short completions, a couple of throwaways, and a punt, but Sanders stayed patient, refusing to force plays. In the second quarter, he found his groove. On a 2nd and 8, he hit a perfectly timed out route to Moore for a first down. The next play, he dropped a deep dig to Cooper between two defenders, placing the ball where only his receiver could grab it. That drive ended in a touchdown, and the Browns never looked back. By halftime, Sanders had outplayed expectations again, not just with stats, but with presence. His teammates fed off his calm, and the offense moved with a confidence that hadn't been there in years. On the sideline, Sanders wasn't celebrating. He was already breaking down adjustments for the next series. Garrett leaned over to a coach and said he's not just playing well, he's making this his team. The second half was more of the same, smart reads, no turnovers, and steady execution. Sanders finished with another clean stat line, but the real story was the feeling creeping into the stadium that the Browns might have found their franchise cornerstone. The Monday after the second game, the Browns facility felt like a different place. The usual post-preseason quiet was gone, replaced by a charged anticipation. Players weren't talking about missed blocks or blown coverages. They were talking about that throw, the one Sanders threaded between two defenders on a 3rd and long. Defensive linemen admitted protecting Sanders was a different job. He wasn't just a statue in the pocket. He was calling out blitzes before they happened, getting the ball out fast, and making everyone's life easier. In the film room, Stefanski broke down a second quarter play where Sanders had sniffed out a disguised blitz, shifted protection, and hit a hot route for 9 yards. "This is how you beat a defense," Stefanski told the team. "This is quarterbacking." Sanders didn't bask in the praise, he just nodded and flipped through his tablet, already hunting for the next improvement. That focus was spreading. Receivers adjusted their routes based on his reads. The offensive line worked harder to give him clean pockets. Even the defense was buying in, knowing a reliable offense meant less pressure on them. By Tuesday, the Browns were prepping for a third preseason opponent, a team known for mixing exotic coverages with relentless pass rush. Sanders and Petzing spent hours breaking down every possible look, with the rookie rattling off answers like he'd been studying NFL defenses for years. In 7-on-7 drills, he was surgical, moving through progressions faster than most rookies dare. On one play, when the defense jumped a quick slant, Sanders instantly flipped to his second read, dropping a perfect ball to Njoku up the seam. The throw looked effortless, but it was the mental speed that had coaches nodding. The locker room vibe was shifting. Veterans started throwing around terms like franchise guy. Receivers stayed late to run extra routes with Sanders, fine-tuning hand signals for hot reads. Running backs drilled pass protection, eager to match his command. By Thursday, the defense was testing him with everything they had, blitz after blitz in team drills. Sanders took a sack once, overthrew a pass another time, but then answered with a deep shot to Cooper that split the safeties and drew a roar from the sideline. Friday's walkthrough showed Sanders taking more control at the line, audibling into new formations and tweaking routes based on what he saw. For a rookie in his third preseason week, it was unheard of. When game day rolled around, the chaos of preseason mixed lineups, experimental plays didn't faze Sanders. The first series was rocky, 2 incompletions and a short run. But on 3rd and long, with a 6-man blitz bearing down, Sanders backpedaled and found Njoku in a tight window for 18 yards. It wasn't a score, but it was a tone setter. You could rush him, hit him, but you couldn't break him. Later in the first quarter, Sanders pulled off a highlight for the ages. Rolling left to escape pressure, he squared his shoulders mid-stride and launched a 25-yard strike to Cooper, who toe-tapped the sideline. Even the opposing bench shook their heads. The touchdown came in the second quarter, a testament to Sanders' patience. Inside the red zone, he went through his reads, saw nothing open, and dumped it off to Jerome Ford in the flat. Ford juked a defender and dove into the end zone. The box score gave Sanders the touchdown pass, but the real credit was in the decision, not forcing a throw into traffic. By the time Sanders' night ended, the Browns had another win, and he had another clean performance. No turnovers, efficient passing, and that same steady leadership. In the locker room, the mood was focused. No shock, just expectation. This was starting to feel normal, and in the NFL, normal execution is a powerful thing. In his post-game presser, Sanders brushed off the hype. "It's about stacking days," he said. "One good game doesn't mean you've made it. We're just starting." That phrase, stacking days, stuck. By Monday, you could hear it in the weight room, on the practice field, in locker room chatter. Sanders wasn't just playing well, he was setting a standard. In 2 weeks, he'd changed the Browns' pulse from hoping things might work out to believing they would. In Cleveland, a city that's waited decades for a quarterback to believe in, that's the kind of shift that feels like the start of something big.